From the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C.
In our final talk before lunch, Patrick Cronin and Thomas Neville, organizers of Thatclass, will share a story about their summer camp last year working with high school students to research the 1968 Washington, D.C. riots. Thomas, Patrick, please take it away.
Honored to be here. Thank you very much.
Everybody ready?
Can you tell me what you asked to be told?
So I'm into music, and I'm just trying to figure out, or just look at things, how music like influences the society, culture, and just really anything about music. And I was told about a court case about Elvis Presley. It was a copyright for the song Hound Dog. I'm pretty sure a lot of people know that. And basically, it was actually originally an African American wrote it, and it was their song, but kind of Elvis kind of made it his own.
It's an interesting change since you usually only go into libraries. As a student, I haven't really seen archives before in this form.
What do you think you're going to find in the file?
I'm not sure right now, but this guy, I'm still trying to figure out what he got arrested for. But yeah, I don't know yet. Hopefully something interesting.
Okay. What did you request to have pulled?
The Paces Ferry Towers master plans from 1950.
Okay, and how did you come about wanting to know about this?
Well, my idea is my capstone project's on affordable housing. So I'm looking at housing designs in like history throughout Atlanta, and I'm also going to look how it's designed, because I want to have a new design that doesn't victimize the residents that stay there.
Okay.
On the internet, you're just looking at a digital copy, and I just can't imagine that kids get overly excited about looking at a scan.
It definitely provides a more interesting aspect than if you're looking just on a computer. Since coming here, just looking at it in person, you really get the interesting feel. I don't know how to describe it, it's just nicer, I guess.
And physically in front of you, what is that?
Well, this is what I was just told, a sun disk. I'm not sure exactly what this is, but I know the one before it, because these are records, and they're 45s, so 45 is like the speed, and this right here is Hound Dog.
How is listening to music on this different than listening to music through that? Or is it the same?
It's not the same, because, well, one, it's, I don't know, it's very authentic, that's the only I can say. All the snap, crackle, and pops.
The other thing is not everything is going to be on the internet. We've calculated that if we scan 40,000 scans a month here, we would be done in 1,300 years. And so, not everything's going to be on the internet. And what is on the internet has already been discovered, where when you have the box experience, you may find something that nobody else has found before. And that's actually more common than people might think.
Did that happen today?
Yeah, exactly. A young lady looked at a record group. It was RG31. I don't remember the name of the record group. I had never been in that record group. Nathan had never been in that record group. Sarah had never been in that record group. And we have worked here for a combined 22 years.
I kind of want to look at the outside and how you can't really see, segregated, how people that need housing can't afford it, but people that have housing, they can. I want to see how you can bring both of these people together, and so it doesn't victimize a lower class than an upper class.
Okay. I'm going to come back and see what else you find later. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
We met these students that morning
Now, traditionally, when high school students go to the National Archives or to a special collections area, they get a tour. And they're lucky if they see maybe some prized collections, and then they go home. So before lunch, this group got to use the finding aids themselves. They got to consult personally and privately with an archivist, and they got to touch neglected archival materials. Then in the afternoon, they were ready to let the archival materials guide their research.
So Patrick and I started work with students in archives about 5 years ago. We were both teaching history at a nearby high school together. When we arrived, it was one of these schools where largely that engagement with the past was restricted to the traditional textbook and testing curriculum. And Patrick had come in with a lot of project-based learning experience. I've been dabbling with archives, and we have been strategizing on what might make a richer experience for these students, and what might they actually be capable of if you empowered them and put them in that position. And the result was us being the students first, as you saw on the last slide. And because of the limitations of normal school, we can't just hop up and leave campus. So we went to the archives, we went to another archive, and we bundled what we could and recreated what we could of the archive in the classroom to get started. We replaced a textbook unit with local archival materials that covered the same time, and we felt addressed the same themes and challenges of the American experience. So just a few things that you can see in this time period, students merging technology and primary documents in the classroom, working with experts from the community. This is local writer and historian John Muller. We scaffold them up to the experience, and then we bring them to the archives. This is the National Archives just down the road. And the first student that got their research ID, we had go into the finding aids, work with the archivist, learn how to make a poll. She put in her poll, and as the students finished getting their research cards, they came in and they taught one another how to do this. And they left there knowing how to navigate that location in a way that some other folks might have said, yeah, but that's sort of above their pay grade, so to speak. Actually, when we arrived on the research side, they said student groups, Declaration of Independence on the other side. And so these students kind of came in and broke the norm in that sense. And we also interacted with community members. This is the legendary Reverend OJ giving us an oral history walking tour of the alley that he grew up in, because this is one of the topics that our students were researching. And in addition to not just interacting with the archives, we had them thinking about how can you represent this information that you're finding, the interpretations that you're making in different ways. So we had them exploring how to use different digital mapping tools, including MapStory. And here you see a nice little tweet representing the efforts that they made to map the history of alley communities in Washington, D.C. And the result was that they got to present. They were the opening presentation at the D.C. Historical Studies Conference to share their process as high school students engaging in this kind of work. And we saw throughout that spread of time that if you gave these students the opportunity, whether in the classroom or in the archive, that they would be excited, that they were capable, and that they could contribute to the construction of our understanding of our past.
But we kept running into limitations, those conventional structural limitations. May they be a bell schedule, or just the constraint of the classroom, physical space. They could be scheduling a field trip, getting permission forms, all of these. There's many, many more. I'm sure many of you have actually encountered some of these. So we started to think, okay, what's happening elsewhere where they've done away with or ameliorated some of these concerns? And the only thing we could find is in STEM. So this is a photograph of a STEM lab that is in Cambridge, Massachusetts. It's called New View. It was started by an MIT architectural design PhD student. And the general model is that the kids are pulled from their traditional high school and they work here full-time as a student. They're engaged in some really great work. We went from that concept and said, okay, how can we start a program that is without these limitations? So naturally, we went to the summer. And our first project was uncovering the 1968 riots in Washington, D.C. And it was at the Washington, D.C. Public Library Special Collections, funded by them. Here's a picture that is in the lab of the humanities. Right? It wasn't artificial like that studio you saw for STEM in Newview. It was a commons location. This is, well, the former Kiplinger Library at the in the Carnegie Building, just up the road, soon to be an Apple store. We took students to those places where overhead is already taken care of, right? Galleries, libraries, archives, and museums, most of which are free to the public. And they're welcoming us with open arms. Please bring students. Very glamorous work. Students wearing white gloves, right? This is our little hub for the summer. 60-hour program 2 years ago. Students collaborating on independent research, then working together on a formal project, a product, if you will. We brought in outside experts. Here, leaning over the computer and leaning over a student, is a man named Brian Kraft. He's involved currently in a 10-year project to map digitally every building in Washington, D.C. To call him an expert is an understatement. He's leaning over a student who's working with some ArcGIS maps. In fact, it's a map he created. So we thought actually we would bring him out. At this time, Brian was, this is, for lack of a better word, student Brian, or little Brian, was 14 at the time. Also the minimum age that a researcher can get a card at the National Archives. Brian, why don't you come on out? Brian is currently he's currently a rising junior at School Without Walls in Washington, D.C. But he's also one of 15 students in the city who was just accepted to George Washington University's early college program. We thought we'd have Brian give us his perspective on, we'll show you some visuals, as we've sort of been doing, and he'll maybe tell you in a little bit more detail what he's worked on that's visible.
Okay, so yeah, that's Brian Kraft. So on my lap is a DC report, government report on the riots and the damage. So if you can see, it's just like street images, like on each block of the damage. So basically what I'm trying to do is replicate that image, or those images, and so, sorry if I'm rambling, but in this book, there's this whole, like a fold-out page of like a hand-drawn damage map of the entire 7th Street and 14th Street during the riots. So what I'm trying to do is basically draw out each block, each building, color it in, if it's like damaged, how damaged it is, if it's salvageable or unsalvageable, and replicate it digitally. And basically, at this stage, I was really, immersed in my work. So when he came, I was like, I don't really need his help, but, but I still, was polite and took his tips, like, thanks, But I wasn't. So, but still, it was a valuable experience, and that actually turned into an internship offer at his engineering firm, JMT. So that was cool. I didn't get to do it. I didn't get security clearance because you're not going to let 14-year-old touch multi-million-dollar documents. So I couldn't do that, but still, good experience. So this is the beginning stage of. So this is from the archive, National Archive. So we had, I think, 2-3 hours So this was basically our only time to gather original documents. And so that's me holding that camera, and that's one of my partners, James. So basically what we did for 2 hours straight, I held the camera. He flipped the page. I took the picture. Flip it. I took the picture. Flip it. And that was, I don't know, 30 minutes. Then I took a break for my neck. And I went back at it. So we were doing that for 2 hours straight. So once we got all that information, I shared the pictures with my other partners, and we had to put it in this spreadsheet. So it's basically 30 columns horizontally, different information, like the percentage of damage, how much the damage costs, the owner of the building, if it's repairable, what type of damage, glass, water, fire damage, and it's about like 90 people in that spreadsheet. And then I had to import that spreadsheet into this map. So these little black dots, those are each of the 90 people that we collected the reports on. And if you were able to click on it, you'd see their name, their age, the building that they own, the address, what type of damage. So there's that. And then the red, yellow, and orange spots, you can see here, is the extent of damage. That was the hand-drawn map I was talking about. I literally had to take a mouse, draw the rectangle, draw the square, and then color it in for, I don't know, about 11 streets worth from L to Q, or S, I don't even know. But yeah, I had to do that. And then if you can barely see these little plus marks, those are the images of each block. So you were able to get a digital visual, then an actual visual, and then if you click on it, like the individual details about the specific building. Yeah.
Unbelievable work that Brian did. And we decided we would do another project the very next summer. And sure enough, I got an email from Brian, hey, can I hop on and do a different project? I said, well, you just continue work on the riots. You don't need me. What am I going to do for you? Just work on the riots. Go finish your map. He said, nah, I want to do something. I want to do your new topic. Downtime and debauchery in Civil War Washington. We looked at brothels in the city. And the goal of this project was to take it to the next level. We thought Brian was doing amazing work, but how do we know where the bar is? And so we looked at existing projects. This is from Ken Winkle at University of Nebraska, Civil War Washington. And on this map, there's a missing layer, and the layer is brothels during the Civil War. So Brian made the layer. And it started to get the attention of the National Archives. And in fact, Brian was one of a few high schoolers to do the first digitization that exists in the National Archives catalog.
So one more project we'd like to highlight that I think brings in another aspect of where we think the potential can be for students working with collections. As a teacher at the American School of Paris, I started a project in partnership with the local World War I cemetery that's managed by the American Battle Monuments Commission. And meeting with the supervisors there, they said, we have all these soldiers buried here, and for most of them, we don't know anything beyond what's on the gravestone. And as a teacher, that was a perfect problem statement to start with in getting the students engaged. So I had go back real quick, thanks. 8th graders in Paris partner with middle and high schoolers from Lopez Island, Washington State to research the 29 Washingtonians buried in this cemetery. And here's a student who's starting with the little bit of data that she has. And just a glimpse into this remote collaboration, these students 9 hours apart, working together, using collections in their respective countries to try to collaborate and tell these stories. And this is an example. This is Raymond Bennett. He died on the first day of the Battle of Château-Thierry. And this is a mix of documents that were both digitized and available in certain databases like Chronicling America, but also archives and materials that weren't digitized. And these students, these 8th graders, learned how to identify relevant archives, write them very polite emails, and ask them if they had any relevant documents and if they could digitize them and email them to Paris. And they did. And now, they've aggregated their work on an app that you can download right now for free on the Apple Store. And you can go to the cemetery And whatever they have found about these soldiers is pinned to the location of their grave, and you can stand there at the grave and learn about somebody who just 4 months ago we knew nothing about. And we were joined in less than 3 months by an independent researcher in Pennsylvania who offered her own research about Jewish soldiers from that state, an independent researcher from West Virginia who has confirmed that he convinced the undergraduate public history department at the University of West Virginia to join in the fall, a family from Illinois whose ancestor is buried in the Seren Cemetery that we studied. She shared all of her documents and let us digitize them for the first time. They've been kept in a cigar box. And a school in New York City you might have heard of called Stuyvesant, and their students jumped in and offered more than I could handle at the time. And now you can go, as these students are doing, and learn about the research of others for free, stuff that was never available before on a free app, and we're hoping to get more and more involvement on this project and projects like this that connect collections across space and get students engaged in processes that develop real skills.
I'd like to re-emphasize that this was Tom's work with middle school students. Something to think about. Maybe we could trickle up. This is a little excerpt from an article written last year, and Brian was interviewed for the article. The line after here, we don't have it, was high praise indeed, but that's okay. We wanted to come back to Brian here and simply ask him, sort of off the cuff, he's asking for more time. The middle schoolers asked, well, if you had one thing, what could you do? Well, we need more time. We just need more time. What would you have done with more time?
Yeah, so the map, that was 7th Street, but another major street during the riots was 14th Street, and I wasn't really able to get to that, so if I had more time, I probably would have done 14th Street, and then also probably would have gone back to the archives, take more pictures, get more information, so I could have more individuals in the spreadsheet and import that. But yeah, that's basically what that was about. And I think, you know, archives learning is just so much more valuable, no offense, but more valuable than textbook learning, because, you know, you're experiencing information firsthand, and primary sources are, you know, usually superior to secondary sources, and you can reach your own conclusions, and you remember and you retain more information once you reach your own conclusions based on the information that's given to you. So I just think archival learning is much more, you know, valuable than textbook.
Anyway, the final challenge then. What if students like Brian had an entire semester? What's your gut reaction is, yeah, but what if we rethink that? I'll ask again. What if students like Brian had an entire semester? Yes, and
I would just add that each of the projects that we've shown you along the way, we've been met with yeah buts. And Patrick and I, sort of our protocol is we call each other out on that. And we've been very adamant about saying, give me a yes and. So we're asking you to think about that. And you can share that conversation, as the lovely deep voice has been saying on social media. But we just don't yeah but us right now. If that was possible, yes and. Thank you very much. Thank you. By the way. Great.
This has been a presentation of the Library of Congress. Visit us at loc.gov.